This is Mission Transition, a podcast powered by still serving veterans. Here, those who've served open up about what comes after the military, the questions, the breakthroughs, and the lessons learned. Because transition isn't the end of the mission, it's the beginning of the next one.
All right, welcome back to another Mission Transition podcast. Today we have Walter Drysdale. I happen to know Walter from, we served at the same unit several years ago, 5-ish years ago, and 2nd Brigade Second Recruiting Brigade, based out of Huntsville, Alabama. So I've known Walter for a little while now, so that's good stuff. And then also Walter, welcome, Walter, and we'll get into tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, first off, thanks for having me. So I'm Walter Drysdale, formerly known as Sergeant First Class Drysdale.
Yep.
I am basically at the tail end of my transition process for retirement. Served exactly 20 years, 1 month, 1 day. Joined the Army in 2005. I started out as a cavalry scout. Had the opportunity to deploy overseas to Iraq a couple times. And then, in my case, I got voluntold for recruiting detail, as many non-commissioned officers probably can relate to that are in the Army and other service branches. And as I was in that assignment, I decided to stay in recruiting. And for me, it was really a decision where I kind of thought about my future. I knew I was going to retire from the Army. Thoroughly enjoyed it. But I started thinking about, what is going to be my next step down the road when I do get ready to retire from the Army, and what skills am I learning that are going to be marketable, that are going to set me up for success in the future.
Yeah, I found that in the recruiting realm or the recruiting sphere, that it does teach you a lot of different, especially how to interact with people, how to read people, and also work independently, because a lot of times, it's what based on what your efforts, what kind of tasks that you're completing to get, to be successful. It's basically all on you. You get some training and stuff, but then they take the training wheels off and kind of go forth and be successful. So yeah, I agree with your, that's great. The long thought process of like, okay, what the heck am I going to do when I get out of the military? Is it Cav Scout versus recruiting? What could help me best be successful post-Army career? So what originally motivated you to join the Army?
So really, probably first and foremost, it was probably 3 different aspects that all held equal weight and value for me. So first and foremost was a sense of patriotism. I grew up in a household. My father was a Vietnam veteran. And so I grew up with kind of those stories and looking at memorabilia he had from his service. And then I also have always had this sense of adventure. So I saw the Army as an opportunity to see the world, to experience things that I wouldn't likely be able to experience without the help of the military. And then also, in my particular case, I also saw it as a means to build my resume, so to speak. I had graduated from college. I ended up getting a bachelor's degree in criminal justice with the intention of going into conservation law enforcement at the time. And I had this idea of working for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, a federal agency, and I started doing some research. And I was like, well, if I join the military, it's going to help me get preferential hiring treatment. Maybe I can go straight into working for the federal government. But I would say all 3 of those aspects were equally important to me when I made that decision to join.
That's a pretty mature outlook, especially, you were looking. How old were you when you joined?
So I was older. I was actually 29 years old when I joined.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
That interest was always there. I had the interest as a young man in high school. But, I was highly encouraged from my family to go to college. And I was a little bit of a professional student for a while.
Yeah, me too.
That idea in the back of my head of wanting to serve in the military never left.
Right. I mean, you share commonalities with that, because my dad was a Vietnam veteran. He retired. So you kind of get that patriotism early on. And then I'm sure you did, like, you look at your dad's awards and how kind of cool it is and stuff like that. But yeah, I turned 26 in basic training. So we were both late bloomers as far as the military is concerned.
Yeah, and I mean, there's advantages and disadvantages no matter what route you go. I mean,
Right.
whether you're a 17-year-old young man or woman, um, joining, or you're older, like we were. I think there's advantages and disadvantages to either side of that coin. But no matter how old you are, I think there's a lot you can gain from military service.
Did you have your degree before you joined the Army?
I did. I had a
Yeah.
bachelor's degree before I joined. I was a little bit of a knucklehead in not pursuing the OCS route, but
Yeah.
to be honest with you, my immaturity at the time. My father was an officer during his
Okay.
service, and I was fascinated with military service. And I'll be honest, I was always impressed with this idea of non-commissioned officers. Kind of
Right.
being that individual, leading troops, developing troops, and kind of being at that point where the rubber meets the road.
Right. Yeah, that's and I did too. That's funny. I had a degree before I joined the Army too, and I remember I was lost in the sauce when I graduated. Had no purpose, motivation, or direction. So it was kind of, I was like, well, the Army's always hiring. Let me go over there and see what they got to offer.
Oh, definitely. When you make a great point, really getting to understand and learn how to really focus, and having that purpose, motivation, and direction is, I think, one of the greatest soft skills that the military develops in young men and women.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that's something that all of us veterans can bring to the table in the civilian market, is just having that internal, finding that purpose and being internally motivated, and then and either having direction or seeking out directions from your higher ups. That's one thing I noticed a little bit different is, in the military, we do training meetings, and you always kind of know the mission. You always talk about mission first. So, but in the civilian life, it gets a little where you have to seek it out, because it's not talked about on a weekly basis. What is our mission? What is our mission?
Mm-hmm.
In training meetings and command and staff meetings, you're always, especially in recruiting, you're talking about your mission every day, 3 times a day.
Oh, constantly.
Constantly. So I think that was a big, where I'm finding out for myself that, okay, how do I fit into the mission, and what do I need to do? Hey, so you're getting ready. When's your last day in the Army?
So my retirement date is September 30th of
Whoa.
this year. So I'm on transition leave as we speak.
Yeah.
So it's right around the corner.
30th of September. Nice, man. And so what led into, like, okay, now is the time to retire? Walk us into, like, why now?
So, I mean, honestly, it really came down to my family. First and foremost, the Army and the military did great by myself and my family. It's afforded us a lot of unique opportunities, financial stability, all those good things. But with that, I needed a little bit more geographical stability for my family.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's been a couple points in my career in the military where I've been a geographical bachelor, and,
Right.
My wife and I, our marriage and our relationship and even our family is, probably stronger for that.
Mm-hmm.
But as my children have gotten older, my wife also has a career as a teacher. I really decided that it was time for me to kind of shift focus a little bit and concentrate a little bit more on my family and providing a little bit more stability for them.
Right. Yep. Cool. And then, so tell us about when did you start preparing for the transition, and how did you prepare to make that transition? Talks to us about, like, what some steps that you took to prepare for the transition.
So, honestly, About 4 years out from my kind of when I had the idea that I was most likely going to be retiring, one of the first steps that I did personally is really taking advantage of some of the programs within the Army to expand on my education and certifications. So
Mm-hmm.
one of the first steps that I did is I realized, I'd come into the Army with a bachelor's degree, did a lot of institutional training and learned a tremendous amount of stuff through different, schools offered through the Army. But I realized I'd be doing myself a disservice if I didn't take advantage of programs like tuition assistance. And so
Mm-hmm.
about 4 years out, just knowing what my schedule was, work schedule, um, I knew that I needed to pursue my master's degree. And if I did it in a means that would allow me to still be effective at my job and still do well in school, I was like, okay, master's degree, normally you could do it in 2 years, probably going to take me 4. So I jumped on the tuitions assistance program, got enrolled in school, and finished my master's degree just this past December.
Nice.
And then,
Congratulations.
oh, thank you, I appreciate that. And then
Yeah, that's
also,
awesome.
um, since I realized I had so much experience in talent acquisition or recruiting, which is essentially a human resource function, I went back to the TA program and decided that I was going to do the Society for Human Resource Management certification
Mm-hmm.
process. And so,
The SHRM. Yep.
sure, yep, yeah. So
Yep.
I was able to use TA once again and get
Nice.
my SHRM CP certification. So that was kind of the first steps I took in terms of preparing for retirement. And then, of course, the more traditional, quote unquote, transition process, I pretty much followed, you know, Army guidelines as far as
Mm.
enrolling in the transition assistance program, 12 months out, going to some of the TAP classes and whatnot,
Right.
and doing those formal processes that are specific to transitioning out of the military.
That's great that you listed some of the resources and programs that helped you, that you utilized the tuition assistance, and that you had, again, the forethought of looking out 4 years and saying, what can I do now? And to help me successfully transition. So that's great. I think, a lot of times people don't, may not look 4 years out, especially if they're younger. I think that's definitely a mature way to approach it, and to be able to get your master's, man, that's awesome. Hats off to you. That's great.
Thank you. I appreciate
That's
that.
Yeah. So what's, talking about your recent, what has surprised you most about your transition to, the last 6 months or so? What kind of, like, oh dang,
So I would tell you
surprised you?
this. So as part of the, transitioning process, there's a lot of resources available for military veterans. But what I found out, and what I think most individuals should be aware of that are, getting ready to transition or thinking about transitioning out of the military, is to really fully take advantage of some of these programs.
Mm-hmm.
You probably need to start reaching out and planning to take advantage of some of them further out than you would think. So, in particular, um, Hiring Our Heroes, which is a great organization, they offer fellowships, uh,
Mm.
and I really had the intention of trying to get involved in one of those fellowships, where essentially, it's on the job training with um, a multitude of different business sectors and companies, but they have very defined enrollment periods for that. And so as I reached out to them thinking um, 8 months or so would be plenty of time, it
Right.
really wasn't. So you really need to start researching some of those opportunities early on, reach out to those organizations or individuals within those organizations, and really kind of nail down an accurate timeline of when you need to take advantage of those, because it might be a lot sooner than you think.
Yeah, I agree. I think, it's almost, with all of the programs available to veterans as they're getting ready to transition, it can almost seem too much. Like, just at what point, because everything's kind of timeline based, and, there's so much out there that, you learn either through the TAP class or just doing a Google search or hearing from your friends about the Skill Bridge program. It's kind of like what you're talking about, the internship, the Skill Bridge program. And I think they're getting ready to do away with that, but I think I heard rumor that they might be doing that. But like you said, to get a Skill Bridge, it takes backwards planning, probably a good year, if not more, to get an organization to accept you. You do all the paperwork, get everything lined up. I think that's exactly right. I agree with you that the time, the backwards planning of it involved is kind of the surprising part about how much time it takes to accomplish those goals and get them put into motion to be able to take advantage of those programs.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that planning timeline is much longer than you would think. So my word of advice would be, reach out early, reach out often, and you know, always err on the side of caution.
Yeah, 100%. So speaking of your transition, did you face any setbacks or any kind of like hurdles that you had to overcome that you could tell listeners about? Like, hey, either, watch out, don't, kind of one of those learn from the things that I messed up on.
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest challenges or you have to keep in mind is, when you've been in the military for, I mean, you could be in the military for 3, 4, 20 years, 25 years, 30 years, whatever the case may be. It's a little bit different when you transition into the civilian sector in terms of, you've got to apply for jobs now. And so even just getting a resume together at first seems kind of like a daunting process. And then, applying for jobs is a pretty tedious process. So just keep in mind that, it's going to be a little bit of a culture shock, so to speak, because you go from steady employment, working for the same organization, whether it's the Army, the Navy, the Marine Corps, whatever the case may be, to not having to jump into a different quote unquote company. And, you haven't had to worry about applying for jobs for however many years that you've served in the military. So that was a little bit of a shock to me. It's nothing that's insurmountable, but I think once you're in that process, it kind of hits you like, oh man, I got to go back to applying for jobs and doing all that comes with it to try and put my best foot forward and hopefully get a call back for an interview and whatnot.
Right. Now it's a great segue for a plug for SSV, Still Serving Veterans. You talk about how, putting it together, a resume was seen kind of like, oh, how do I do that? Or how do you go about looking for a job? So, that's one of the things that Still Serving Veterans, one of our main things, especially with a veteran transition service, is getting that resume going and, setting up about how to go about looking for a job. So can you talk to more about like how Still Serving Veterans helped out with that nugget or that slice of your transition?
Yeah, so I mean that's what brought me to Still Serving Veterans was that piece of the transition process. So one of the things, I'd highly recommend as service members are transitioning out is, talk to your friends, talk to your colleagues about the process, because when I was discussing this with colleagues that had just retired or about to retire, that's what brought me to Still Serving Veterans, because it was recommended. And, they said, hey, look, kind of put your resume together the best you can, get everything kind of laid out, and you can take advantage of this organization called Still Serving Veterans, and they'll assist you with refining your resume, giving you job hunting tips. And even beyond that, it's nice to have someone to talk to kind of maybe motivate you a little bit or kind of, pep you up in that process. So you're not feeling like you're going through this process alone.
Yep. And I appreciate that, that's what I have found since working here is that kind of a common sentiment is that, looking for a job can be lonely in and of itself. So having a cheerleader in your corner, so to speak, to help, with that process, that can understand where you're coming from and has your best interest involved, because, ultimately your success, or any veteran that we help, their success is our success. That's our whole foundation, is being able to help transition veterans and stuff like that. So, yeah, I think it's a great organization to be a part of. So I appreciate the feedback on that. So
Absolutely. And if I could add one more thing,
yeah, please add it. Yeah, go ahead.
what was it, last week or 2 weeks ago, where you set up the mock job interview?
Oh, right. Yeah,
I mean,
that's right.
that was great for me to kind of get back in that mindset, but also, for me personally, it kind of boosted my confidence. Like, okay,
Right.
this, I need to take it seriously, but at the same time, like I'm ready to do this, and just kind of, keeping me motivated. Like, okay, I just gotta put my best foot forward, to get that call for that interview, and everything will
Yep.
be good from there. And so that was a tremendous help to me as well.
Okay, great. And that's the other thing. Yeah, we do mock interviews, and I think the more it just the minor practices of, can I log on? If somebody sends me, like just the habit of just working out some rusty things that, because most interviews will probably be virtual. So I know that may drive some anxiety of people, like, am I able to log on? Am I going to be on time? Is my computer set up, or my headphones? Can they hear me?
Hmm.
That's kind of all the little things that can help, kind of help ease those tensions and give it that boost of confidence. Um, like you said, and we provide that feedback, and like I said, on your mock interview, you did great, obviously. So, and I really appreciate you showing up here and helping us out with getting the word out. So, speaking of getting the word out, you said you got learned about still serving veterans by word of mouth.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
So, that's one of the key takeaways too. I would tell any transitioning service member is, really, really lean on your networks, your
Mm.
colleagues, your family. Um,
Hmm.
I think a lot of times, that military mindset for a lot of us means we're kind of stoic and we don't like to ask for help,
Right.
because sometimes we see it as a type of weakness, maybe.
Hmm. Right.
Um, but don't be afraid to talk to people, um, especially your colleagues, because they could give you a lot of insights that you might not have thought about. Or like in this particular case, they can recommend organizations that they've worked with that have been extremely helpful for them in their transition.
Right. Yeah, and that's, and that's, I think the word of mouth is probably one of the better, um, advertising that we can have. Not advertising is not the right word, but just, because you're going to ask somebody that you trust. You're not going to ask some knucklehead about how did you go about the transition. You're going to go to somebody that you trust, and if they start saying, hey, Still Serving Veterans is a pretty decent organization to, go to, that's great. That especially in Huntsville community, there's a lot of people retiring out of here. So, that word of mouth, that's great to hear that that's how you learned about it.
Oh, it's the best advertising, I believe.
Yeah.
I mean, there's
Yeah.
a lot of
I agree.
different a lot of different avenues for advertising, but I mean, in my personal opinion, there's nothing stronger than an actual recommendation from another person.
For sure. For sure. So that's pumps me up, learning that the word of mouth, and Still Serving Veterans been around for 20 years. So they know what they're doing, and able to, you know, back up what they say that they can do.
Absolutely.
So, what's one thing that you wish you had known before you started transitioning? What's one thing you may think like, oh, I should have started this earlier, or what's kind of like one nugget,
Um, just know that you're not alone in this process. You know,
right?
there are so many veteran oriented organizations that are there to help with the transition process and looking for employment. Um, don't don't try and go it alone. You know,
Mm,
take advantage of the different organizations like Still Serving Veterans and some of the others that can offer assistance. And talk to your friends, talk to your family, talk to your colleagues. Don't add stress to the situation by thinking that you have to do it all by yourself.
right. Cool. So we're getting ready to wrap it up here. Walter, I really appreciate you coming on, man. And just kind of a side note, you know who else was a client of mine?
No, who's that?
Colonel Welch.
Oh, excellent. That's awesome.
He came down, and I was like, holy, Colonel Welch was both of our former brigade commander at 2nd Recruiting Brigade. So, it was kind of, the Army's a big place, but then sometimes you find out that, it's really small. And like I served with him, served with you. So it's really, I think I like that. That's kind of neat.
Yeah. I mean, that's a neat experience.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a neat experience. And it just goes to show, organizations like Still Serving Veterans, they're helping, commissioned officers that are at the top of the
right
mission ranks. And then you have someone like myself, a non-commissioned officer, an enlisted soldier, and, you get the same great service, and they can offer something for everyone, no matter where they're at in their career or, where they are within the structure of the military. There's something for everybody.
Nice. And that's a great way to end this. I think you talk about Still Serving Veterans can help out no matter where you are, whether you're retiring, whether you're NCO or a soldier or airman, E1 through E9 or O1 through whatever it is, O10 or something like that. I don't know. But that'll be a great way to end this. Again, Walter, I really appreciate you coming on here, and be on the lookout for another segment of Mission Transition. I appreciate everybody tuning in, and I hope everybody has a good day.
Thanks for listening to Mission Transition, a podcast from Still Serving Veterans. Have a question, a comment, or want to share your transition story on the show? We'd love to hear from you. Send us an email, social@ssv.org.